Reddit story. We loved each other, but the sacrifices I made were never acknowledged. Have you ever been in a relationship where you gave everything to your partner, but it seemed like nothing you did was ever enough? You loved them deeply, but somehow the sacrifices you made were never acknowledged. And no matter how much you gave, you still felt invisible. This is the story of Chloe and Luke. They loved each other, but Chloe began to feel that no matter what she sacrificed, it was never appreciated. And that's when everything started to fall apart. Chloe and Luke had been together for over 4 years. They met during their first year of college and quickly became inseparable. They shared similar interests. They loved traveling, exploring new places, and supporting each other's dreams. In the beginning, everything was perfect. They made future plans, supported each other's careers, and built a life together that felt right. But as time passed, Chloe started feeling that something was wrong. She was the one always making the compromises, always the one to support Luke, while putting her own career and dreams on hold. She moved to a different city for him, left behind her friends and family, and adjusted her life to fit his needs. Luke was busy with his career, and while Chloe was there to support him, her own ambitions slowly faded into the background. Chloe had always put Luke first, constantly making sacrifices for their future together. But over time, she began to feel like Luke wasn't noticing her sacrifices. He didn't see how much she had given up to make their relationship work. Whenever Chloe brought it up, Luke would say that he appreciated everything she did, but his actions didn't match his words. Chloe was giving everything, but it never seemed to be enough for him. She began to feel like her own happiness was secondary to Luke's. This wasn't about love fading. It wasn't about infidelity or loss of affection. It was about the simple fact that Chloe's sacrifices were never truly seen or appreciated. In relationships, we all make compromises, but when one person continually sacrifices for the other without acknowledgement, it can lead to resentment. Chloe's love for Luke was evident. She gave up so much for their future, but Luke's failure to recognize her sacrifices started to erode their connection. Chloe began to feel like she was invisible in the relationship, like her own dreams didn't matter as much as Luke's. This created a gap between them, and no matter how hard Chloe tried, she couldn't bridge that gap. Love is about balance, about both people giving and receiving equally. But when one person constantly gives without receiving appreciation, it can make the relationship feel one-sided, and eventually it becomes unsustainable. This story resonates deeply with many people on Reddit because so many of us have been in relationships where we loved deeply, but we felt like our efforts and sacrifices were taken for granted. And despite giving everything, we never received the recognition or appreciation we needed. You invisible. Sacrifice commented, "I gave everything, but he never acknowledged the sacrifices I made. Eventually, I started feeling invisible and unloved." 22. 8K likes. Love isn't just about grand gestures. It's about recognizing and appreciating the sacrifices your partner makes for the relationship. Without that recognition, the love starts to fade. Sacrifice for nothing shared. I gave up my career and happiness for him, but he never saw it. The lack of appreciation destroyed everything. 24K likes. When you give up your own dreams and goals for someone else, you expect them to at least recognize your sacrifices and show gratitude. When that doesn't happen, it creates a sense of emptiness in the relationship. You Unseen Effort wrote, "I was always the one sacrificing, and it felt like my efforts didn't matter. It hurt too much to keep going." K likes. Sacrifices are a part of every relationship, but when those sacrifices go unnoticed, it feels like you're giving without receiving. and eventually that imbalance can tear everything apart. You go unacknowledged, love said. We loved each other, but the sacrifices I made were never enough for him to see. That's when everything fell apart. 17. 1K likes. Love is not just about how much you give. It's also about how much you receive in return, especially emotional acknowledgement and appreciation. Chloe's story is a powerful reminder that love isn't just about giving. It's about mutual appreciation and understanding. When sacrifices go unrecognized, it's easy to feel unimportant in the relationship. Love can only thrive when both people feel valued, respected, and seen for what they contribute. Otherwise, even the strongest love will eventually fade. Where we loved each other once, but over time, we grew apart, and that's when everything started to fall apart. Have you ever been in a relationship where at first everything felt perfect, but as time passed you started to realize that the love you shared was no longer the same? You loved each other deeply, but somewhere along the way you grew apart, and you started to wonder if the relationship was meant to last. This is the story of Lily and Matt. They loved each other once, but over time they grew apart, and when they both realized it, everything started to fall apart. Lily and Matt had been together for almost 5 years. They met at a mutual friend's party and hit it off immediately. For the first couple of years, their relationship felt like a fairy tale. They shared similar interests, supported each other's dreams, and had so many plans for the future. They talked about getting married, having kids, and growing old together, and it seemed like they were building a life that was meant to last. But as time went on, things started to change. Lily began to notice that their connection was weakening. Matt, who once shared the same passion for adventure and building a future together, seemed to be drifting away. He became more focused on his career, spending long hours at work, and came home feeling exhausted. Lily, on the other hand, wanted more. She wanted to build a family, spend time together, and create a future that felt stable. She wanted to continue to explore the world with Matt, but she realized that he no longer shared the same enthusiasm for these things. Conversations between them started to feel strained, and the connection they once shared began to fade. Lily tried to talk to Matt about how she felt, but he didn't seem to understand. He would say things like, "I'm doing this for our future." But Lily didn't feel like they were on the same page anymore. She loved him deeply, but the gap between them seemed to grow larger with every passing day. This wasn't about love fading completely. It wasn't about infidelity or any deep betrayal. It was about the simple fact that over time, people change, and sometimes their paths no longer align. Lily and Matt loved each other deeply, but their goals and visions for the future began to differ. Lily wanted stability, a future where they could build a life together, explore the world, and start a family. Matt, however, became consumed with his career and ambitions, prioritizing work and success over everything else. At first, Lily tried to be supportive, understanding that Matt was working hard to provide for their future, but over time, she felt like their relationship wasn't a priority for him anymore. The spark they once had started to fade, and she realized that they weren't walking the same path anymore. Love is a powerful force, but when two people want different things from life, it becomes harder to make a relationship work. And when those differences aren't addressed, the bond they share can start to break down. No matter how much you love someone, if you don't share the same goals or values, it's impossible to build a future together. This story resonates with so many people on Reddit, because many of us have been in relationships where love was never the issue. But as time passed, we realized that our paths were no longer aligned, and no matter how much we cared for each other, it became impossible to stay together. "You paths apart," commented. "We loved each other, but our futures were so different that we couldn't make it work." Sometimes love isn't enough to bridge that gap. Chapter 20. 2K likes. Sometimes love just isn't enough when your dreams and goals no longer align. And no matter how hard you try, you can't force two different paths to converge. You love, but not enough shared. I loved him with all my heart, but our futures were just too different. We wanted different things out of life, and it was hard to stay connected. Chapter 19. 4K. Likes. When you love someone but you realize you're heading in opposite directions, it becomes increasingly difficult to stay in the relationship no matter how much love you have left. You. Changes over time wrote, "We loved each other, but we grew apart. Over time, our relationship became more about the routine than the love we shared." Chapter 8K. Likes. Love can be strong, but if it isn't nurtured, it can fade as time goes by. And when the spark is gone, it becomes hard to keep the relationship going. Oh, no longer on. The same page said, "We loved each other once, but our lives were moving in different directions." Eventually, we had to accept that it was time to let go. 5K likes. Sometimes the hardest decision to make is letting go, especially when you know that no matter how much love you have, you're no longer on the same page. Lily and Matt's story reminds us that love is a beautiful thing, but it's not always enough to keep two people together. When your dreams, values, and goals start to diverge no matter how much love is left, it's impossible to keep moving forward together. And sometimes the best thing you can do is to let go and give each other the space to grow in the directions that feel right for you. We loved each other, but the betrayal broke everything, and that's when everything started to fall apart. Have you ever been in a relationship where you thought everything was perfect, but then, in one moment, your world crumbled because of betrayal? You trusted that person with your heart, your soul, and your life. But all of that changed in an instant. This is the story of Grace and David, two people who loved each other deeply. But the moment betrayal entered their relationship, everything started to fall apart. Grace and David had been together for nearly 4 years. They met at a friend's party and instantly connected. Their relationship felt like a fairy tale. In the beginning, they shared common dreams, laughed together, and had so many plans for their future. David was the kind of guy who always made Grace feel special. He would surprise her with small gestures of love, and always made her feel safe and loved. Grace thought she had found her soulmate, the person she could trust with her life. But over time, Grace started to feel like something wasn't quite right. David had been acting distant, coming home late, and seemed distracted when they spent time together. At first, she thought it was just work, stress, or something temporary. But one night, while going through David's things, Grace discovered something that shook her to the core. David had been seeing someone else. There were messages, intimate exchanges, and plans made that no one could deny. Her heart sank as she read the words. And in that moment, everything changed. The trust that had been built over years was shattered in an instant, and Grace felt completely betrayed. Grace confronted David immediately. "David, who is she? What's going on?" David hesitated for a moment, then his face turned pale, and he finally admitted, "I'm sorry, Grace. I've been seeing someone else. I never wanted to hurt you." Grace felt the world crash down around her. The person she loved and trusted the most had betrayed her in the worst way possible. This wasn't just about a single mistake or a one-time error in judgment. It was about the betrayal of trust, the breaking of a promise, and the emotional toll it took on Grace. When you trust someone completely and they betray you, it leaves a wound that's hard to heal. Grace loved David deeply, and she thought he was the one she could spend the rest of her life with. But in an instant that trust was gone. David's actions were unforgivable in Grace's eyes, and no matter how much she tried to process it, she knew that their relationship would never be the same again. Betrayal in relationships is devastating, not just because of the act itself, but because it destroys the very foundation of what the relationship was built upon: trust. Once trust is broken, no matter how much love is still present, it becomes impossible to continue forward without feeling the weight of that betrayal. This story resonates deeply with many people on Reddit, because many of us have experienced the pain of betrayal and the emotional devastation it leaves behind. When trust is broken, it's hard to find a way back to what you once had. Our trust. Broken commented, "We loved each other, but when trust was shattered, everything fell apart. It's not about love anymore. It's about the trust that was lost." But 23. Love alone isn't enough when trust has been broken. It doesn't matter how much you care. For someone without trust, the foundation of the relationship crumbles. Her heart shattered, shared, "I thought we were happy. But when I found out about the betrayal, everything changed." It's hard to rebuild after trust is lost. 21. 7K likes. Betrayal is one of the hardest things to overcome in a relationship. Even if the love is still there, the damage done to the trust can make it feel impossible to move forward. The Unforgivable wrote, "I loved him, but once I found out about the affair, I couldn't look at him the same way anymore. The trust was gone, and so was my love." 4K likes. Sometimes the hardest part of dealing with betrayal is not the act itself, but the emotional shift that comes with it. Once you no longer trust someone, it's hard to continue loving them the same way. Amid trust is everything said. We loved each other, but once the trust was broken, everything else seemed meaningless. It's the foundation that keeps everything together. 18. 1K likes. Trust is everything in a relationship. When it's gone, nothing else can hold the relationship together, no matter how much love is left. Grace's story is a painful reminder of how fragile trust is in relationships. When betrayal enters, even the strongest love cannot survive. Love is built on trust, and once that trust is broken, everything else falls apart. And sometimes, no matter how much we wish things could go back to the way they were, we have to face the reality that love alone is not enough to heal the wounds caused by betrayal.